And we're now live.
Right, okay. So we'll start the meeting. It's now 6 o'clock. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much indeed for your attendance. Particularly a particularly warm welcome to Sophie, who's meeting. This is your first meeting with us, I think, this evening, for this meeting anyway, and to Jackie, who is joining us from her annual leave, and to Ian, whose birthday it is this evening. So yeah, happy birthday, Ian, and welcome to everybody. So you can't hide anything from me, I'm sorry. So let's start the meeting. Substitutes nominated and apologies for absence. Over to you, Kirsty.
Hi, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Barnes, Whitaker and B. Smith, and we have substitutions for Councillor Rivron and Councillor Blapper on their behalf.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us this evening, Councillor Blapper and Councillor Rivron. Members' interests, to remind members of the need to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or other interests they might have in relation to the items on this agenda. And as usual, I'm happy to accept those interests if declared either now or when it becomes apparent. So that's fine. Admission of the public. This meeting is open to the public. We are being live streamed on YouTube. Except for item 7. So when we get to item 7, the YouTube stream will be stopped at that point because that item is exempt. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of June. Gosh, a long time ago. I can't believe it's 1st of November. Does anybody have any specific comments on those, or can we agree that they are a correct record? Megan, Councillor Swift, you need to unmute.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't got much to say on these. I'm uncomfortable with one of the items, but having discussed it with a couple of people, I'm going to leave it. But I have had assurances of Ian that he will move the working party so it meets quickly. Okay.
Right. Okay. That's lovely. Thank you very much. Any other comments on the minutes for the last meeting, members? Okay, right. In which case, can I have a proposer for those, please? Thank you, Councillor Lee. The seconder? Who was here last time? Thank you, Megan. I know you were here last time, so that's fine. So yes, if we can mark those as approved then, please. Right, so just a second. I'm scrolling between things. So item 5 then, review of the elections held on the 6th of May. Who is leading on this one? Is that you, Michelle? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us again. The report was submitted as usual to provide a review of the elections held in May. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read and digest the contents of the report, so I won't go into everything in fine, minute detail, just overview in brief. So the background provides information relating to the number of and combination of polls that were held in May this year. In preparation, it can be seen that in addition to the usual project planning, that a considerable amount of additional work and risk assessments had to be undertaken due to the pandemic for the entire electoral process. In terms of postal voting, we saw an increase of around 11,000 electors opting to vote by post this year, rising from a generally static 35,000, which is kind of fluctuates 1 or 2 each year, depending on the election type and timing of the elections. So we've gone up to 46,000 postal voters currently. The increase in those returning postal voters also increased from generally about 68%, which was in 2019, obviously no elections in 2020, to 75% this year. So It's a good increase in response to, which was good, obviously through the pandemic. Due to COVID, a major piece of work was required and undertaken to determine the use of polling stations at the time. Due to the outcome of this work, several buildings were either unsuitable or unavailable. Therefore, alternatives were sought at the time. In addition, we had an untimely request from the Cabinet Office and the Department of Education discouraging returning officers to use schools as polling stations. That meant that additional changes had to be undertaken quite late on in the planning process. We'd already done work on poll cards and booking stations and began staffing. So we kind of had to backtrack a little there and pick up on the changes that we had to make again. The verification and count was split over 3 days. This again was due to COVID. We used Northbridge Leisure Centre, and I'm sure many of you were there that we used every room available and had to do this over 3 days due to COVID and the number of polls and the complexities that the combinations brought. Working with others, as always, the team was supported by colleagues in other directorates, colleagues from West Yorkshire Electoral offices and West Yorkshire Police. And I have to say, all under as much pressure as we were at the time, but all really helpful in providing support where it was needed. We've built some really good working relationships up. Each year, electoral services are placed under extreme pressure, as you all know, often working very many long days, evenings, weekends, etc., to ensure that the elections are held successfully. This year was certainly no exception. As you can see in the report, the number of hours that the team worked over a substantial shorter period were astronomical, really. And we had to do that to make sure that the elections were delivered. We can't draft people in to help us because obviously it was quite specialist in what we do. Sometimes too many cooks do actually spoil the broth. So we had to do that independently, if you like. Looking ahead, as you can see from the report, we're always reviewing our internal processes to make sure we remain as efficient as possible whilst making sure that our legislative requirements are at the forefront. We've already begun planning for the 22 elections. An issue that you're aware that we have is that we're not sure at the moment if we're able to use the leisure centre for a count venue, but the team are currently looking for alternative premises as part of our usual contingency planning. We've got a number of new things on the horizon. We've got the review of parliamentary constituency boundaries, which is still ongoing. We've also been made aware that there will be an electoral review of Calderdale Council. The last review was undertaken in 2003. So Calderdale, as well as another number of authorities, will be doing an electoral review in the coming years. Since concluding the work which followed the May elections, there's always about a month's worth, 6 weeks worth of work to do after the elections is finished. The team continued to be very busy with a number of unplanned local by-elections, parish by-elections. We've got a neighbourhood planning referendum, we've got the bid ballot, and of course we're in the middle of doing the annual revised publication of the electoral register, which will be ready on the 1st of December. In addition to all this, I know you're all aware that the elections bill is currently going through, and this will bring a number of changes. We won't know exactly what they are or the fine detail of that until that's all been pushed through. But it does mean, and I kind of mentioned this in a few other venues or places, that it's likely that we're going to need additional resource so that we can maintain service in the fashion that we do. So I just really ask that members consider the report, and I'm happy to take any questions, and hopefully that's a bit of a brief overview without me reading page for page, which I'm sure we could be here till 2 a.m. if I did. So hopefully that's okay for everybody.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Michelle. And can I take this opportunity to place on record my thanks as a ward councillor, as mayor at the time of the last elections, and as a counting agent at the time of the last elections, also to the extremely the professionalism and how well run the elections were in extremely challenging circumstances. So I think formal thanks are very much due.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I can see a couple of hands up. Megan, I think I saw your hand first.
You did. Yes. If you're formally doing that, can I second it so it goes into the minutes, please? Because I mean, we've all talked through this more than once, from where Michelle's had to go and put up with this. I've offered to be a counting agent for you, haven't I? As long as you put me on town, I really was the problem then. If you're not going to do them, I'm going to sulk. No, seriously though, I agree with everything that Dot said. Can I add to it some of the not silly things, but the little things that people come up with during think up to the count? And there were a couple of things that I rang about, and you dealt with them there and then, so there wasn't a problem later on. So not only are they professional, do a good job, they're also flexible, which is a plus, I have to say. Yeah. I didn't know we were having a council review. I don't know what one is, but didn't know we were having it. So does that mean we could finish it with different wards?
It could. I think it's quite a lot. It will be done over quite a long period of time. We've not got the timeline yet. We've just been told that the council will be undertaken. The Boundary Commission will undertake the review in due course. They've asked for an idea of what we've got on over the next few years election wise, but it's quite a big job that we will be involved with, but it will involve a lot of people across the board. So I'm sure once that has started officially, that the right people and everybody will be aware about it. We've only just had a letter to say this is what's happening, just to put you on standby, and I don't think that will be undertaken for a good couple of years, so there's plenty of time for everybody's input into that. But yes, it could be.
Yeah, can I just add
Very quickly,
or make one more comment? Yeah, but I'll be quick. Yeah, I don't know whether it says in the report, because I've seen a couple of times, but I want to make sure that much as some of us were panicking over the postal votes and them not being where they were, there didn't appear to be any panic from Michelle and her team. And, we've just got to be grateful, I think, that the post office seemed to get itself together at the end, so that I don't think nobody's contacted me to say they didn't have the postal vote on, and I think I'm probably like other people, so I'm sorry I had the extra, but well done and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor.
thank you, Councillor Swift. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Michelle, an excellent manager, as always. And I always try to do an email to thank you after the event. These times are quite fraught. I think one of the questions I'd like to ask, because actually in the Big House ward last time, we had two candidates up at the same time. And the tallying system seemed to work extremely smoothly and provide more accurate results. So I'm just wondering if that's something we could consider moving forward, even when there's just the one candidate, because actually, even when we did a recount, it was exactly the same figure. So it was, remarkable all the work that you do, but actually it's just something for consideration, really. Yeah,
the counting boards are generally used for multiple member vacancies. We use them at the parish elections where they're all-out elections. If we had a review and we had to go for all-out elections, we'd use them again. I think resource-wise, to do that for a full election, it might take us quite a lot longer to count. I think for the few miscounts that we might get, not saying that's not important, we get the numbers right. They might take a couple of recounts in a ward or in a box to get the numbers right, but I'm not sure that they would be practical to use. But we did. It was something we knew we brought in for the last parish elections and thought they were really good.
Just coming back and thank you for that clarification. Another point is really going back to when we used to count more locally. And if there's sort of consideration as to whether we split the regions again, and because actually coming from Tomidin to Halifax, you could potentially there's potential to do it all in one go and take the tension out of the whole process. As a candidate, it's always quite stressful having to wait those the hours that you have to wait sometimes, and that's no disrespect to your staff.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I think obviously this year was really quite different because of COVID. Generally, we'd get it done in the same evening or the same day when we do bring it back to Halifax. I think splitting the venues back down, we don't have enough senior members of staff to do that, and we started changing things generally when postal voting demand came in. We might have had 2,000 or 3,000 postal votes back in 1985 up to 1990. Now we've got 46,000, and doing that process is quite time consuming.
gone quiet.
Have we lost?
Frozen. Frozen.
Oh, okay.
Is that a timely freeze? Sorry.
We were just saying how time consuming it was.
Yeah. It's just one of those, I think, to go back to counting, and we don't have the senior members of staff to be able to do that. And since postal voting in demand came in, that's when we kind of consolidated down to one area. So I'm not sure it's something, obviously always there for consideration, but it would need something that the returning officer would need to be involved in those discussions. But it's a small chance of us doing that, I think, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Sorry.
Thank you, Michelle. I think that's a really, really interesting point, actually. And as you mentioned before about the possibility of Northbridge not being available, actually it's not beyond sort of the realms of probability or possibility, at least, that your hand might be forced on that to at least split to maybe 2 venues if one is, if any of the alternative venues are not big enough. But I guess you and your team will be working on that, I am sure.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we will watch this space and await updates with bated breath, as I say.
Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you. Was Councillor Lee first? I'm not sure. He might have been, possibly.
I apologise, Councillor. I didn't see. I've been looking for the little electronic hands, and I didn't see your physical hand raised. I do apologise. Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Lee, do go ahead. I apologise. I didn't see your hand raised.
My little electronic hand has been up for some time, so it wasn't just a physical wave.
I'm sorry, it's a different colour and it's somewhat disguised in your background. So my apologies for not seeing it. It's my fault entirely. Do go ahead.
There we go. I'm a victim again. Thank you, Chair. Apart from Councillor Blackborough's very constructive comments, I would like to reiterate what I've said previously about this election and about Michelle and the team, and closely identify with the points you made and seconded by Megan. This was absolutely unique, this election. It was incredible how smooth it was, considering that I know by definition that Michelle and the team was sort of making things up as they went along, because it was just so different to anything that we've seen before. And so it was a really excellent effort. And let's all hope that we'll never have a situation like that to deal with in the future. So well done, Michelle. It was a great effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Yes, they do say necessity is the mother of invention, do they not? Councillor Baker.
Yeah, I mean, echo things others have said, given such difficult circumstances. It's amazing that it went so well with so few hiccups, and I think most of the hiccups that did occur were the result of external things like the postal vote printers. Just makes you realize though how, I'm not sure what contingencies there are if a printer fails, and all printers do have technical problems and fail from time to time. I'm sure all of us involved in printing leaflets sort of experience being lit down by a printer at some point in our lives. So I kind of sympathize with that, but it was, I think, quite stressful perhaps for some of the candidates and campaigners when you came across someone and they're like, I haven't got my postal vote yet. I think that did cause quite a bit of anxiety amongst voters and campaigners. So anything we could do to try and strengthen that in future. I'm not sure how you do it. I guess the procurement, but again, printer can be great for years and hiccup outside of their control.
I think this year, obviously, they'd got the same issues that everybody had with it, with the acts, the enormity of the elections that they'd got backing up because of we didn't have elections in May 2020. I keep going off here. Sorry, I keep going off. I think they'd got the issues with the backup of all the elections they'd got to do, and obviously their internal issues. It wasn't just the printers. I think it was the delivery of the postal votes. Obviously, they went a day later than we expected in one or two instances. Sorry, I keep going off here. Am I okay?
Yes,
I can hear you okay, yeah.
Yeah, if you recall it in previous years when we used to do the postal votes in-house, they wouldn't have gone out while the end of that week, whereas whereby they were a day too late than we expected, they were still 2 or 3 days earlier than if we'd have issued them in-house. So I know there was an issue, Royal Mail had got issues, their internal issues again due to COVID and staffing, but what we did do was make sure that we had people on standby to go and hand deliver. From the report, a very small amount that hadn't received them, and we offered to wait and stay. Now that's something we will bring into our processes going forward, to have an officer available to go in these extreme circumstances and hand deliver and where necessary, once that official deadline comes to play, when we can reissue. So there are lessons that we've learned from it. Re the printer contingency, they've got good contingency plans like we do. You'll see them from the report, we had a late delivery of ballot papers. We've got plans for another printer to do those for us if need be. So the plans that they have in place support us as well. And thankfully, I've not seen that anybody failed.
Yeah. There's just one other thing, which is such a small thing, I almost feel, because of the circumstances went so well, I almost feel like I really am trying to almost nitpick in here to even say anything negative. But in terms of the packs that are sent out, I wonder where someone is like agent for multiple wards, whether we could think about either like compiling stuff into one pack to save a bit on postage, or think about whether they all need the Electoral Commission guidance multiple times. Because I was sent, I think I got a bit tired. I saw that Electoral Commission's guidance pack so many times because I was agent for multiple wars. But I guess that's like an admin thing, but it's probably just easier to print the packs all the same. So it's something we'll definitely look at, because whilst you get fed up of seeing it, sometimes we get fed up of printing it out, and it's making sure that you get it. Maybe you could do like a light on the guidance one for people who are, for multiple ones, and you could print some of those, and then print some of the full packs or something.
I think we tried to do that this year, where you were multiple, just to give you actually one. You might have got it in a different letter, but we tried to, consolidate all that together. So that is certainly something we do try and tweak every year. So we certainly will look at that, Councillor, definitely.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. I think that's a very, very interesting point. I know that it's, everybody, if you're involved in the sort of the aid as an agent or a candidate or anything along those lines, then you can end up with multiple packs of information. But it's better to receive it more than once and not receive it at all, I suppose. So like you say, there's ways and means around it, I guess.
Absolutely, we'll look at that.
Yeah,
sure.
I think all in all, and given that we had the mayoral elections on top of everything else, plus the by-elections and sort of various different things happening, I think all in all it worked remarkably well, and there were very few noticeable hiccups, certainly not from the public facing point of view. Everything went pretty smoothly, other than sort of the slight issue with postal votes, which we've already discussed. So thank you again to your team.
Thank you.
And everybody involved in the organisation and the mammoth task that is sorting elections, and I hope you're ready to do it all again next year.
Yes, thank you. Just
it'll come round again remarkably quickly.
We know we're planning already for next year's elections. It's not one job a year, not one day. It's a little bit longer. I promise you.
I'm sure all of us who are councillors,
that.
Some of us up for election, I'm sure that that we've all got that date firmly in mind too.
Fabulous.
Are there any further questions for Michelle or comments? Okay, that's lovely.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Michelle, joining us this evening.
Thank you.
It's much appreciated.
Cheers.
So thank you very much.
Right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Michelle. Thank you. Right, okay, I think that was a very useful report and a constructive discussion. So thank you all very much for that one.
Right, Chair, we just need to make sure that everybody agrees to receive the report. If we could just...
Yes, there's always that little bit. Yes, so if we... Apologies, thank you, Kirsty. It's when you're sort of not having the agenda in front of you because you've scrolled down through the papers of the report. Okay, so if we can agree to note that, then please, members, all in favour? Thank you very much. Councillor Riveron.
No, sorry.
Oh,
was
you just
raising my hand.
raising your hand to vote in
I
agreement.
wasn't sure whether you used a physical hand or a electronic hand to vote.
I think the meeting is small enough that we can get away with a physical hand, but yes, certainly the electronic hand is easier for larger meetings. But yeah, whichever way you do it, it's never as straightforward on Zoom as it is in person, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, everyone. Right. So agenda item 6 then, which I've now lost. Apologies. Right. So this is the meeting timetable. And I think this one is over to you, Ian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is an item that comes at this time every year for onward recommendation to Council. It sets out, as you'd expect, the meeting timetable that's proposed for the municipal year to follow. I think there have been a number of issues that have arisen because of the clashes for various meetings, but the headlines are that the Budget Council will be on the 26th of February 2023, an annual council on the 17th of May 2023. There's been a couple of tweaks, I know, Chair, that have taken place, this meeting being one of them. But subject to that, members, if you're content to recommend that through to Council for the municipal year 2022-23, please.
Thank you very much, Ian. Yes, I know that there are a couple of meetings that have had to change in governance and business cycle. Kirsty, could you just remind me what they are? I haven't got them in front of me because I'm on the wrong screen.
Yes, it's the January meeting next year, which was booked in for the 17th, clashes with Cabinet. So with the agreement of the board, if we could move that to the following Monday, which is the 24th. And then there's the standing August bank holiday meeting, which always clashes. And if the board's happy, I can move that to the following week.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. And then obviously, so that's in the current cycle. Is it in the current? Oh, goodness me. No, it won't be. The January one's in the current cycle. The August one's in the next cycle. Right. Okay. Yeah. So that sounds sensible. Megan, Councillor Swift.
Thank you. Do you know, I knew what we were going to say till you explained it. Now I'm very confused. No, seriously, yeah. Because there's been so many clashes, and I suppose it has affected other groups, that our group has been going through trying to use the dates that were there, but add some so that we didn't have a training event plus something else on the same day as group, because it gets very, very complicated. And it's really nobody's fault. It's just that there's so much going on. But those dates have been sent off to our officers, and I would like them to be looked at by whoever needs to look at it before the done, before the meetings are all approved, to make sure we haven't got something wrong, or you haven't changed you've changed something that we didn't know was being changed. But I mean, it's become very, very difficult, and you know, I'm not putting the blame on to Amanda at all. But you know, I think each of our group meetings this year since the AGM, I've been losing people before the meeting to go to something else. So yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Swift. Yes, it is an ongoing challenge to fit everything in to the days of the week. I think there just aren't enough of them, and nobody likes Friday evening meetings. So that only really leaves 4 potential days a week. And it is a challenge to fit everything in, particularly when, you know, Amanda Benning's trying to put in training sessions for us all as well, which is really important that we attend as many of those as we possibly can. But juggling them around with everything else is something that is a real challenge, and that would be very helpful. Thank you, Kirsty. That would be really, really helpful. Just as much as anything, making sure that Amanda and political assistants know when meetings are in the calendar. I think one of the problems we've had just recently is that the meetings aren't updating, certainly for me, on the Outlook calendar. I can find them if I log on, if I look at the council website and go for the calendar there, but they're not necessarily on the Outlook calendar. And the ones on Modern Gov, they only seem to go onto the system once the agendas are published. So it makes planning in advance and making sure that you're not missing vital meetings a little more challenging. It takes some detective work to figure out when the meetings are, particularly if you can't find. I mean, we've all got the meeting dates for the 2022-23, and we will have those. But trying to find that to refer back to when you can't remember where it was you last saw it is not always the easiest of things. So I think it is a bit of a challenge for everybody, I think. Councillor Baker.
Thank you. I'm just trying to look at this and get my head around it. So I used to recall, didn't we used to have a council meeting in April normally? So we'd have budget count, we'd have a meeting in February and then budget council, and then it would be an April meeting, then annual council, then there's the July one. Have we just dropped the April meeting now from this cycle?
I'm happy to answer that if you like, Chair.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Hi.
First.
When putting the calendar of meetings together, Councillor Baker, I have had comments this past year that it was being held within PERDA, and also it's questions about how the holiday fits within Easter as well. So it's just navigating it around those instances. But it doesn't mean to say that one can't be put in, and we're happy to negotiate that down further down the line. So it's something that we can put in. It's not a set timetable. It can be worked around.
It just seems a long time to go all the way from February to July without a meeting. I get the point about the election period might limit some of the decisions you possibly might be able to make, but PERDA doesn't stop you from making decisions per se, does it? It's a bit more nuanced than that.
No, definitely not. And that's something that I will be looking at, also changing the April council meeting in the current year, which I've been requested to have a look at as well. So I will do that for 2023 too.
That's great. Thank you very much, Kirsty. And thank you for raising that, Councillor Baker. It is always a challenge, sort of making sure you don't fall foul of, sort of election campaigning and PERDA, and trying not to have too many meetings in August, and everything else. There's that many trip hazards. It's a wonder we have any meetings at all sometimes, really. So I think the planning of the meeting timetable is it's a complicated business, and hats off to everyone who's involved. Thank you very much indeed for your work on that. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. Just something that was mentioned then that I've been thinking about, and it was Modern Gov. I've not had feedback, positive feedback from any of our group about Modern Gov, and I perceived that it was quite an effort to get it implemented, but I just wonder whether other members feel that it's been a really worthwhile thing to do. I've not really had any feedback about it, but it seems that I'm able to do the things that I was always able to do by the methodology I always used, and I don't really see the benefit. But of course, I could be missing something, so I don't know if anybody else has any comments on that.
Ian, you raised your hands for that one.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think we recognise there are still developments necessary to ModGov to make it as comprehensive a system as it needs to be. Having said that, the ease of use for calling up agendas and reports through the ModGov system is very straightforward. And I think the more that members embrace it and use it, they will see that it is very much much more straightforward way of accessing the information that can be tailored to their particular needs. They can set it up so that it provides them with the agendas and papers for those meetings that they are signing up to, or all of them if necessary, as I do. And the work that is required still between now and probably the end of this calendar year, just to ensure that the information that is currently on the intranet is transferred across, is migrated across to the ModGov system to make it as comprehensive as possible, is ongoing. Kirsty and I met with the IT section last week just to make sure that was ongoing. We also recognized that there needed to be still a place for the meetings that take place to be set out far enough in advance, and Kirsty very kindly did some work to make sure that that does still happen until we get the transfer across to ModGov fully complete. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Ian. It's much appreciated. And yes, I find it fairly user friendly. I think there's little glitches, but as you say, the more you use it, the more you get used to it. And I think that one of the things for me was the fact that I was looking at everything on my iPad earlier, and now I've got it all up on my laptop, and it's all completely different on the laptop to what it was on the iPad. So you know, it's just, but you know, it's one of those challenges that you work with, and yeah, we will overcome it. I think, Councillor, you made a point about Modern Gov, and I think perhaps it would be a useful thing for this group to formally review Modern Gov and actually put that on the agenda when we've had it in place for maybe a year or so. So we've got used to, you know, if we've got, it's no point reviewing something sort of within 2 or 3 months when people haven't really used it enough to get around that. But I think, you know, if members are in agreement, then, you know, sort of having sort of the platform of Modern Gov on the agenda to look at and to sort of take comments on formally in maybe another 6 months or so would be quite a useful thing. And of course you can access confidential minutes and confidential agenda items on Modern Gov, whereas you can't get those via the council website. So it does have that benefit too. Right, I've now completely lost track of who indicated first. I think it was you, Councillor Swift. And then Councillor Dacre, and then Councillor Bagburgh. So.
Yeah. A personal view, but one that I think is shared. I lost the will to live on this during the training sessions. I wasn't sure until somebody else spoke to me about it, whether it was just me. But we started off very, very complicated. And I am sure some of those things, you know, will be needed at some point in the future, but at the moment they're not. People like me just wanted to get into ModGov, get the papers and get the agenda, and for doing that it's working really well. I personally aren't using it for anything else, but some people might be. But I thought as though, well, yeah, I felt as though some of the people who were coming from out of the council to tell us how to do it were talking Japanese, because it made as much sense to me as it would have done in Japanese. Thanks, but I like it now.
Well, that's good to know, Councillor Swift. Thank you, and thank you for your comments. I don't disagree with all of them, that's for sure. Right, Councillor Dacre.
Can you take Councillor Bradburgh, since he's a member of the
yes, of course.
For me. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Dacre, and thank you, Chair. I think the biggest thing is I might have missed it, but actually being able to actually change the password, because every time I have to look it up, we're being provided with the password. I've looked everywhere and I can't seem to find it. Actually, using the system, I've got used to it, and like tonight, I was able to download the papers, you know, as a substitute. I don't normally not put myself forward for these papers. But if there's something equal that we need to take to member development working party, happy to take that back as well as chair of that committee as well. So I'm more than happy to look into that on a separate basis.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bradburgh. Councillor Dacre.
Thanks. Yes, I'd just like to say one. I think certainly the issue about us as members making the best use of it, I think is something that probably has to be looked at again. I think we did get training on all the marvellous things you could do, and by the time I'd managed to actually get into it, I'd forgotten all about that. And so I think probably most of us need a refresher because we're not getting the full benefit from it. I think one of the really good things is I can now at last see exempt documents, which I couldn't on my iPad, and that's really good. But one of the other things I think we do have to remember is that the system has huge benefits for the administration of the democratic process. So behind the scenes for the officers, it makes life a lot easier and more streamlined for them, eases the burden on them, and that really has to be a good thing, making it easier for them to do their job and provide the service for us. So I think that's it's not a direct benefit to us, but it's clearly an indirect benefit to us and to the council and to the residents as a whole.
Excellent point, well made. Thank you very much, Councillor Dacre. Right, are there any further comments on this item, which before we got sort of slightly sidetracked onto the benefits or otherwise of modern gov, is about the meeting timetable? Are there any further comments on meeting timetable at all? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. Right, if we can indicate whether we are happy to accept that then. And we'll put that forward with the, obviously, the addendum that any changes that become necessary that aren't obvious at the moment are made, you know, sort of as in due course if needed. So if we're happy to accept that, members, yeah. I'm seeing lots of nods and hands up and yeah, and no dissent. So that's great. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, members. Right, we now progress on to item 7. So we need to have a short